Sorry about that. Yeah. So that happens when you are in the sport mode. Let it go from the traffic light. And you were just in the car wash. And the tires and everything is still pretty wet. So that's also then basically a warning. So in the normal driving mode, this car is really calm, steady, has a lot of traction, although rear-wheel drive only. In the sport mode, the electronic stability control is drawn back. Then you have to pay attention, especially when the tires are wet. So when there's just like very dry surface and you have not been to the car wash recently, then it's still somewhat stable on the sport mode in, dry roads. And there's still the Sport Plus mode, which lets you even fly the car a little bit more, but always pay attention. But the good thing about this vehicle is it has so much balance. Great Alcantara steering wheel here for today. Fabric seats also hold me tight. And this car is literally like a go-kart. So it's one of those very rare cars left which feels light and go-kart-ish. The Mazda MX-5 would be also one. Of course, way less expensive, the Mazda MX-5, than this one. But here you just feel so light and agile, and you can basically attack at any time. And here, driving with open top, pure silence. This one here in the Boxster T, the 2-liter engine only. There's this 2.5 liter in the S and GDS, which makes you a half a second faster to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour. This one is still at 4.7 seconds in the acceleration figure, so it's still, pretty fast. The sound is, of course, not that sonorous. But is it really a huge difference from the base Boxster to the bigger one? Yeah, of course, you have a little bit more punch in the GTS, for example. The big difference is, of course, recently we've shown you that with AJ and Michelle, where we had the 718 Spider and the GT4 came in. Those ones are really different because they have naturally aspirated engines, more displacement, but then they also don't have that turbo punch. So, and the gearing was very high. Here the gearing is actually quite short, and in normal driving, the car shifts up pretty early. But just when you do some lane change here, every lane change is pure fun. That's about this vehicle, and this actually does not change if you have the 2-liter or the 2.5-liter engine, because this car here is about this pure handling. That's the main thing about this vehicle. So we're getting on the motorway, and I want to also tell you something about closed top. Here we go. You can open and close up to 50 kilometers an hour. So of course it's more silent than in here. It's not the most silent car. That's also not what it's meant to be. Now some acceleration, 60 to 100. Let's go. That's already it. Wow. Wow. And this is where you feel that's also different to 911. In both, you have a very good acceleration, yes. But here you just feel lighter, you feel that less mass is being accelerated. And this is something pretty cool, So if you want the best handling and the sportiest ride, it will always be the Boxster and the Cayman. And now to the 911 here as the 4S convertible. That means, and it's also interesting as for a concept comparison, because here we also have, there's the Boxster. We have the 4-wheel drive, the all-wheel drive, and it is still very much rear-wheel drive dominant. I can also see it here in a special gauge, where I have just a little notch on the front wheels, and the most definitely on the rear wheels, and that will remain the same. Just when you, for example, use the launch control, really max it out, then there will also be some more on the front wheels. But especially for the rear wheel drive cars, there is this new wet mode for the new 911 generation, and that one then gives you more traction in, let's say, those rainy conditions. So, also driving with open top, and I have to say, I wouldn't say that the 911 gets less wind inside. Maybe I think that the 911 even gets a little bit more wind inside than the 718. That's my, spontaneous feel for that. Very interesting. It also handles very well the steering input right here. See here how it is also one-to-one steering input to what the tires are doing on the road. That's really good. Oh, when I touch here a bit behind the steering wheel, it makes a little rattling sound. Interesting. So, that didn't happen with the 718 right there. But the steering wheel also with a good size. Wow, it's a lot of fun, but you feel that the car is a little bit heavier, just in comparison to the 718, of course. There are more assistance systems in this vehicle. For example, when I get to the side of the road, then the system already is warning me I'm close to the side of the road. So the 718 in this case is a little bit, basic, you could say, but also more purist. So it really depends, of course, on what you really prefer. But definitely it's a lot of fun to drive this car. It has such a stable handling. That's really very, very cool. And we also have more power. I'll soon also get to a road where we can drive a little bit faster. Well, the thing that astonished me the most, I was expecting from this test that the 718 is probably the sportier, the lighter, the more handling car and so on, but that the 911 definitely delivers more comfort and more, let's say, total sophistication in the ride, and also as for the noise comfort and so on. But I'm really surprised when I test it now directly after each other that it's not the case. So yeah, there's more fancy infotainment system. Some of the buttons are probably more coast intensive, but then when I take this part here, the steering wheel, or some other rattling noises that come here when we go over some bad roads, I have at the moment the feeling that the 718 is the more refined model, and that might be something, again, because this is the beginning of the life cycle and the 718 is rather towards the end of the life cycle, that can play actually a major role. Not exactly sure that might be the reason for that, but we can just present you what we find here, what we are experiencing with the car. So both very interesting, great sports cars, great handling. But if you ask me right now, and no matter the price, which one do I want to keep for driving tomorrow to have the most fun? Sorry 911, sorry Mr. Icon, it's the 718. And now to the conclusion for today, 718 versus 911. Well, from the front, I like the 911 more because it is characteristically Porsche, also with the retro elements and the round headlamps. But the overall design, I think the 718 is a little bit sleeker, especially in the new generation. The 911 has become, a little bit wider even than before, and especially the rear is very wide. You can like that, but I think a Porsche should also look sleek. On the interior, the design is on the one hand somehow identical, but the 718 is reduced more to the max, especially with the 718T model. You can reduce it even more, of course, with this special model, but I think it's all I need, infotainment system-wise, for example. So the 911 with all those new fancy stuff, you have more things to control and so on, but sometimes I think it's a little bit of overkill. Comfort-wise, both are not the most comfortable cars to me, but I think they don't differ so much in comfort. Maybe the 911 gives you a little bit more room on the inside, but not too much actually. Driving-wise, this is the agile driving machine. This one, the 911, also performs well on the racetrack. But this one here with the midship engine concept has a better handling, better balance, everything you need, you feel one with the car. Here you don't feel as much one with the car as with that one. Still, of course, has a great handling. And then if you look at the price, 60 to 80k, and here 120 to over 180k, so more than double the price for the 911, and that's why I say then, this is my pick for today. What's yours?